The power of words. Maybe you're thinking, wait a minute, words don't have power. My mom told me sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can't ever hurt you. We talk about politicians having empty words and empty rhetoric. But actually, words do have a lot of power. And we're going to explore how language is really helpful in helping human beings create their world. Let's look at the components of language, for instance. The components of language, first of all, is that it's symbolic, which means that we have a set of these things that really represent something else. And those symbols might be hand gestures, as we can see here, or marks on a piece of paper, or even sounds. And just having symbols doesn't really mean anything unless we can all agree on what those words mean. And so, well, we have a dictionary here, but not all languages have dictionaries, but all languages have to have people who agree on what those symbols mean. The final component of language is the fact that we have to also agree on what is the right way to put those symbols together, and that's called grammar or syntax. And it's very important because even if you agree on what words mean, they won't make sense unless you put them together right. For instance, I can use words that you recognize easily, good, good, study, day, day, up, but that's in such a weird order, it doesn't mean anything to you. But if we apply a different grammar, the grammar from Mandarin, and say those same words in Mandarin, it makes perfect sense. It's a sentence that we would say means, if you study every day hard, then you will advance. All right, so those are the components of language. Scholars have been studying language in different disciplines for a long time. And in the 20th century, there were two scholars who started thinking about language in a different way. They thought of it in terms of speech acts. And speech acts meant that they weren't just, language isn't just used to send messages back and forth, it's also, we use it to accomplish things, that part of what we do in human life can only be done by using language. And this is a really important thing. So I'm going to explain those things that we do through a little story. All right, so my husband and I decide to take a drive, and I'm going to drive the car. And we get in, and as soon as I turn on the motor, I notice that I see this symbol on the dashboard. And guess what? It causes me to think something. So the beauty of symbols is that we can think in symbols. And what I can think is, I can think these words, which are symbols. The gas tank is almost empty. And the beauty of that is, I don't have to know this, that's what a gas tank looks like. In fact, I didn't know what a gas tank looked like until I Googled it for this presentation. And so I can think about an empty gas tank simply in the symbols, the words that I use. And then the next thing that I can do is that I can convey information to my husband. I can say to him, hey, the gas tank's almost empty. We're going to have to stop and get gas. All right. So very simply, I didn't have to show him the gas tank. He doesn't have to think about what it looks like. He doesn't have to know. He just has gained this information. Then we get to the gas station, and I can do another thing with language, and that is I can get others to act. I jump out of the car. I say, hey, I'll pump the gas if you'll clean the windows. And he gets out and he does that. And so it was very easy to get him to do that. I didn't have to show him how to do it or demonstrate or anything because I could use these symbols to get him to do it. Now, the final thing that I can do with language is this, and that is I can do things. And the thing that I do is that when I get back into the car, I turn to him and I say, thank you. Thank you for washing those windows. I hate to do it. And in saying those words, thank you, I have thanked him. Now, we could argue that I could have, given him a kiss on the cheek or something like that, but he wouldn't necessarily know that's a thank you. When I've said the word thank you, that becomes the act. Now, Searle and Austin, they took this final idea particularly and went with it and really began to expand our consciousness of how the human world is really constituted by these speech acts that we do. For instance, let's take a look at some of those things. First of all, we'll talk about a promise. As little kids, you know, we would say, oh, I didn't promise I was going to do it. Well, what constitutes a promise? If you say that word promise, then it's a promise, right? Yeah, we were taught that. So maybe we're very careful and we don't always say the word promise unless we really are promising. When we talk about big promises, well, marriage is a big promise that we make. We stand up in front of people and we say it in a very public way. And saying those words, I do, right? I do promise, that constitutes being married. Well, that we think that that's what it does, but actually it's signing our names, which is another speech act, to this piece of paper and filing it with the court. And so other people also sign their names to it. Our marriage, our legal marriage, exists as a speech act. All right. And so when you begin to expand your ideas about this, you can see that so much of human activity is accomplished through these things. That long ago, people who had settled in the United States made this big speech act that they sent to England and said, hey, we're not going to be a part of England anymore. We are our own separate country. We have the Declaration of Independence. It's a speech act, right? And from that, we wrote the Constitution of the United States, which is another big speech act. Now, you might say, well, we had to fight this war and so on. Well, the war was a consequence of our speech act. England could have said, oh, okay, be a country, we don't care, which eventually they kind of did, but after we fought the war. But in fact, what made us a country is this speech act and them accepting that speech act. And now we are this. We have our Constitution, it sets out our laws, it tells us and the rest of the world who we are and how we're expected to act. And if we don't act that way, there are consequences because there are laws. And other people in the world also set aside these speech acts, even if it's just orally. We are this people. We have these values. This is the way you prove that you're a human being inside of our society. And it is through your speech often that you do those things. And so I hope that from this presentation, you've come to recognize that words have power and weight. And so we do, as human beings, lots of things with words. And so I hope that you will learn to use them carefully. Thank you.